guys, welcome to another video. Today we'll be reviewing The Matrix Resurrections. This film came out today and was directed by Lana Wachowski and stars Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss. Now before we start, hit the like button, subscribe to the post notification bell so you know if you're a video. Let's just start. Let's start talking about the good. So some of the actors and actions, I thought they were good. Especially Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen. They were really good in the film. Neil Patrick Harris was also very good in the film. He's sort of the villain, kind of, in this film, and I thought he was good. There are some good character sequences, especially between Neo and Trinity, and there's a good fight sequence between Neo and Morpheus. It's sort of like a mini training sequence, and I thought it was good. It's that sequence in the trailer. And I think there are some cool sequences with the robots, who, they look good. The IO world looks good. Cinematography in terms of those sequences, I thought looks good for the film. The twist. Now there's a twist in the third act with Neil Patrick Harris's character. He essentially created Neo and Trinity again. I thought it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't a great twist. It was just fine. New Agent Smith. Now he is good in the third act, but nowhere near as good as Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving is one of my favorite villains of all time. His version of Agent Smith is by far 10 times better than the one that we get in this film, but I thought the villain was okay. Agent Smith in this film is okay. There are some good interactions between Neo, Trinity, and the analyst, who is Neil Patrick Harris. In the third act of the film, I thought their interactions were good. It was entertaining to see them together on screen in the third act of the film. The score by Johnny Klimek and Tom Tykwer, it was good. It was a good score. It's sort of similar to the other Matrix scores, and I like the scores for the Matrix, so naturally the score for this film, I thought it was good. And the ending sequence. Now the ending sequence, I thought it was okay. It wasn't a great ending. It was just okay. That's all the good that I have. Now let's move on to the bad. So the opening sequence for this film is horrible. It is a bad opening sequence. I was not invested in the film from the start, and it kind of gets worse from there. The opening sequence was horrible. The first and second acts of the film are too ridiculous. Even for the Matrix, it gets really ridiculous in those first two acts of the film. The other films, like obviously the original Matrix, is fantastic, and those first two acts were very, very well done. I was invested in the characters, but this one, the first two acts were just terrible. Too ridiculous. It was filled with nonsense. There are a lot of ridiculous sequences in those first two acts, so I thought they were just crazy and ridiculous. The cinematography, which of course includes the shots, the cameras, the lighting, is bad. It is very bad. The fight sequences are too dark. Some sequences look decent, but especially that first act and going into the second act, there are some action sequences in there where I could not understand what was happening. There are too many cut sequences, cut scenes that happen between the characters fighting. It was horrible. It was terrible. The acting was bad. There is some bad acting in this film. A lot of the characters in this film are terrible. For example, Sadie, who was that little girl in, I believe it was The Matrix Reloaded. Priyanka Chopra, she's terrible. She's horrible in the film. I did not like her at all. She had nothing to do in the movie. She had nothing to do. Plus, her acting was terrible in the film. There are a lot of sequences with cringe acting. I don't understand why, but they just messed up with picking the actors and actresses for this film. The story is weird and crazy, and I am all for that, but they just completely mess it up in this film. It is crazy and weird, but not in a good way. There's no character development. There is zero character development in this film. I did not care about any of the characters, whether they lived or died. All the new characters were horrible. I did not care about any single one of them. The only people I cared about was Neo and Trinity. Those were the only characters. Morpheus I cared about, but that was it. Agent Smith, who was of course played by Hugo Weaving, one of my favorite action villains. He is substituted for another actor, and it is terrible. It is horrible. When I tell you it's horrible, it is bad. It is He is nothing like Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving captured the character perfectly, and it was kind of unnecessary. It was very unnecessary for them to change him. Now, if Hugo Weaving didn't want to come back, that's his choice, but what they did with him was horrible. Yahya Abdul-Mateen, he's good as Morpheus, but nowhere near as good as Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne is Morpheus. He is the best Morpheus, but Yahya Abdul-Mateen was good in the film. The meta sequences. Now, there are some terrible meta sequences. Most of the film is a little too meta. It's over the top to the point where it's too relevant to now. And I don't like The Matrix being that way. I knew something like that was going to happen with this film. The original 3 movies, while they did get worse as they went on, they had something new that they offered. But this film, way too meta, and I did not like it at all. There are a lot of boring sequences in this film. When I say boring, I mean very boring. I was bored from basically the end of the first act all the way to the end of the third act. It was awful. It was horrible. It was too boring for me. The Sentinel, which are those robots, they're now good and they're pets. So people are using Sentinels as pets. That is ridiculous. That is another ridiculous plot point that does not make any sense, and I don't understand why they had to include it. It's terrible. It's a terrible decision, and it just ruins the continuity of the other Matrix films. Niobe, who's played by Jada Pinkett Smith. She is one of the worst characters from The Matrix Reloaded, and they had her return for this film. She's okay in the film, but her return is pointless. In The Matrix Reloaded, she was terrible. And she was pointless in this film. She was pointless. No need for a character. Neo versus New Agent Smith. Now, the New Agent Smith, like I said, I did not like him. He's terrible. That fight sequence is horrible. When I tell you it's horrible, it is bad. There are too many cuts between the different punches, the different fighting abilities and methods that they use. It's horrible. The camera work for that sequence, cinematography for that sequence is terrible. The third act, the helicopter sequence, it ends too quickly. It just abruptly ends in that third act. It just ends. Like, there's nothing that happens in that film, or I mean in that third act, that actually has substance. Especially that helicopter scene, it just ends. It's Neo and Trinity, and it just ends. So I thought it was horrible. That's about it. The Matrix Resurrections is a terrible sequel. It's by far one of the worst films that I've seen all year. I'd rather you go see The Kingsman or Spider-Man No Way Home, because this film is horrible. And I'm going to give The Matrix Resurrections a D. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the post notification bell so you can get notified for a video. I'm Peter. Thank you for watching.